They thought Earth's warriors were primitive, until they saw them dance through gunfire, laugh during explosions, and name their warships things like Boomstick Express. This isn't just combat, it's chaos with rhythm, explosions with humor, and warfare turned into a performance. If you think you've seen everything, you haven't faced humans yet. All right, team, drop the bass and breach on the beat. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. Tarnik leaned closer to the shimmering holoscreen, his chitinous fingers twitching nervously. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of tactical displays and flickering data feeds. He had seen many contracts before. He had watched terrifying enemies march across battlefields, studied monstrous machines from uncharted galaxies, and reviewed footage of war so brutal it haunted his dreams. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for what he saw now. In the footage, humans were training on what looked like a dead desert world. They moved in perfect sync, darting from cover to cover with impossible precision. Their gear looked cobbled together at first glance. Some helmets even had painted fangs or flames. But the way they moved told a different story. Each one was a storm wrapped in skin and armor. They weren't just trained, they were terrifying. But it wasn't just how they moved that shook Tarnik. It was how they laughed while doing it. "They're laughing," he said quietly. No one in the briefing room responded. Everyone was too busy staring at the humans on the screen, one of whom had just performed a backwards roll off a cliff edge, landed behind a mock target, and neutralized it with what looked like a modified toaster. At the head of the room stood Milo Reth, the Granoid captain of the mercenary fleet. His rough, bark-like skin gave the impression of strength and age, and his deep voice usually ended arguments with a single word. But even he looked uneasy. "This is the contract," he finally said. "The United Trade Lords want us to neutralize an Earth colony gone rogue. These are the defenders." Low murmurs swept through the room like a cold breeze. Someone near the back muttered something about hazard pay. Silka, a young linguist assigned as a translator, tilted her head, watching intently. "Sir, are they naming their gunship Friendly Fire?" Milo Reth didn't answer. On screen, the aforementioned gunship, painted with flames and stickers, swooped in low and dropped a team of soldiers mid-roll. One of them shouted, "Surprise pizza delivery," before unleashing enough firepower to melt a tank battalion. Tarnik rubbed his eyes. "That's not standard doctrine. That's entertainment. They look like they're playing." Another, mercenary, a thick-shelled brute from the Jovali system, grunted, "I don't care what they're doing. They bleed like anything else." Milo Reth slowly turned. "Did you not see the part where one of them redirected an incoming missile using a cooking pot?" Everyone went silent again. The footage rewound and played the moment. Yes, it was a cooking pot. There were even noodles in it. Silka squinted. "What are those markings on their armor? That one has a smiley face with crossbones. Another has what I think is a unicorn riding a missile?" "They're humans," Tarnik said. "They make jokes while under fire. Their tactics are erratic. Their humor is disturbing. And they name their units things like Team Thunder Banana." "Thunder Banana?" Milo Reth muttered, turning away in disbelief. The screen shifted again. A new feed played. This time it was night. The humans were engaged in what the data labeled as a stealth insertion mission. But there was nothing quiet about it. They moved like ghosts, but one of them still found time to whisper a joke about hiding snacks in their armor. When the explosion started, the laughter over their comms didn't stop. It got louder. Tarnik leaned back. "They aren't following strategy. They're improvising every second." A different voice chimed in from the shadows. A data technician. "Their gear is custom. That helmet doesn't even meet standard atmospheric requirements, but it's painted like a shark, so I guess that makes it okay." "Have we tried contacting them?" someone asked. "They sent back a message," Milo Reth said dryly. He tapped a control, and the holoscreen displayed a single text. Challenge accepted. Bring snacks. Tarnik stood. His legs shook slightly. I won't do it. I've studied hundreds of enemy species. Most of them use strategy, logic, patterns, but these humans, they weaponize chaos. They turn battle into sport. And somehow it works. They built powered armor because it looked cool in movies, Silka added. They developed plasma blades after playing video games. And they used their most unstable soldiers for special operations because, and I quote, those guys are the most fun to watch. One of the mercenaries laughed nervously. They don't intimidate us. Myloreth stared at him. No? Then maybe you'd like to be part of the first drop team? The laughter stopped instantly. Tarnik stepped closer to the screen and whispered, they created something called a combat stim that tastes like bubble gum. They call it Go Juice. Their medical kits come with stickers. Their leaders don't discourage this. They encourage it. Because somehow, it makes them stronger. The final seconds of the footage played, a squad of humans executing a synchronized maneuver while music, actual music, blared from their armor. One of them performed a spin kick just to launch a grenade midair. As it exploded, the soldier struck a dramatic pose and said, now that's fireworks. Myloreth turned to the group. Final chance. Who's still interested in this contract? No. One raised a hand. Silka cleared her throat. Sir, permission to request a change of assignment? The captain nodded slowly. Granted. As the group began quietly filing out, Tarnik stayed behind. He stared at the screen, now frozen on a human giving a thumbs up after leaping from a gunship mid-flight. He muttered to himself, they don't fight like us, they don't think like us, and worst of all, they enjoy it. Somewhere in the distance, another intercepted message played through the speakers. Jenkins, where's my spare ammo? Check your other pocket. Oh, right next to the gummy worms, Tarnik shuddered. We're not ready for this. The scout drones arrived before dawn, their small frames gliding silently over the rocky hills of Talrex 5. Dirax, a tactical analyst from the cold moon of Yurn, hunched over the data station, his multiple eyes scanning the incoming visuals. He had been in charge of battlefield logistics for over a decade, and nothing ever surprised him anymore. That belief crumbled the moment he saw what the humans were doing. On the screen, a human squad had landed in what was supposed to be an abandoned outpost. Instead of setting up defensive perimeters or calling for support, they were having a barbecue. One soldier danced while flipping food over open flames. Another adjusted something on a powered exosuit while humming loudly. One of them had even tied streamers to a turret. Dirac squinted. Are those balloons? He asked, hoping the answer was no. Behind him, Rinnick, a quiet logistics officer with a mind built for sorting numbers, double-checked the coordinates. They're in the right location, she said. That's Sector C, the same one under high threat alert. Dirax shook his head. Then why are they grilling sausages? The answer came moments later when the motion sensors lit up. A wave of enemy units crept toward the outpost expecting resistance. What they found instead was loud music and the smell of cooked meat. The humans didn't panic. They didn't scramble. They activated their defenses mid-song and fought as if they'd rehearsed this moment to a beat. The enemy forces were taken apart methodically, with a strange blend of precision and absurdity. One human launched himself from the top of the storage bay using what looked like a homemade ramp made from broken panels. He landed in the middle of a skirmish, yelled "Party time," and scattered the attackers using stun grenades that exploded. With confetti. Confetti. Dirax froze the footage and stared at the screen. What even is this? They wrote a report, Rinnick said, pulling up a file. It's titled, Creative Resource Usage, Tactical Barbecue Response. Dirax clicked open the document, hoping it was a joke. It wasn't. It outlined how to use cooking gear for distraction, how to embed explosives inside food containers, and how to time music cues to maximum morale effects. It even had a recipe section. They turned lunch into a combat strategy, he muttered. More footage came in from the southern ridge. A separate squad of humans designated as Unit Shadefire was executing what should have been a basic recon operation. But instead of camouflaging themselves, they had painted their armor in bright neon colors. Visibility for psychological misdirection, the report said. Enemy won't believe real special forces would dress like this. That moment of hesitation gives us the edge. Dirac leaned back, overwhelmed. They're building chaos into their strategy. Rinnick nodded. And they're winning with it. The next clip showed Unit Shadefire cornered in a narrow pass. Instead of retreating, they formed a circle, activated something called a soundstorm protocol, and blasted music while releasing smoke grenades in every color of the rainbow. Then, while their enemies paused in total confusion, they burst through the smoke, firing from every angle. As the footage ended, Rinnick looked up. There's more. They also reprogrammed a cleaning drone to carry medical supplies and snacks. Dirac frowned. Snacks? They called it Chipper. Gave it a personality. The drone greeted each wounded soldier with, "Hey buddy, need a bandage and a cookie?" For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then came the audio logs. Human communications were chaotic but somehow coordinated. "Jenkins, where's my explosive lollipops?" someone asked over the comms. Another responded, "Left pocket, right next to the glitter smoke." "What's glitter smoke?" Dirac asked aloud. Apparently, it's a crowd control tool, and also part of morale-boosting celebrations. Celebrations? During combat? Rinnick showed him the last clip. A rooftop extraction, under heavy fire. One soldier activated, something called Operation Sparkle Exit. The footage showed them escaping the building under a hail of colored smoke, neon lights, and coordinated fireworks synced with their jumps. As they launched into the air, one human yelled, "Next time bring marshmallows." Dirac stood up, his voice shaking slightly. "I've analyzed thousands of combat encounters. Never once have I seen soldiers plan for fireworks mid-evacuation." Rinnick stared at the screen. And yet it worked. That night, back in the fleet's operations center, Dirac was called to a meeting with Fleet Command. He was asked for a full risk analysis. He didn't speak for several long seconds. Finally, he said, "These humans are not tactical soldiers. In the traditional sense, they're artists of war. They paint with bullets and confusion. They sculpt battlefields into chaos, and somehow they always seem to be having fun while doing it." A senior strategist leaned forward. "Can we counter it?" "Not directly," Dirac replied. "They use surprise as a weapon. They weaponize absurdity. They improvise like it's second nature, and worst of all, they enjoy every moment. That makes them impossible to predict." Later, as Rinnick walked past his workstation, she saw a note he had scribbled and pinned to his screen. It read, "If humans start laughing during a mission, double your shield strength and run." Just then, another transmission arrived. A short audio file from a new operation underway on a jungle moon. A voice came through clearly. "All right, team, today's challenge, most creative takedown gets dibs on dessert." Dirac put his head in his hands. It was going to be a long war. Porin was a diplomat, not a soldier. He had negotiated peace between empires, settled trade disputes on unstable planets, and once diffused a standoff with nothing but a well-timed compliment and a tray of fruit. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the madness he witnessed when he encountered human special forces on the battlefield. It started on the planet Virene, where tensions had boiled into open conflict. Porin had been assigned, as a neutral observer, there to assist in communication between the Planetary Defense Alliance and the human reinforcements. He expected the usual: formality, planning, quiet tension. Instead, the first thing he heard as the human dropship landed was music. Loud, thumping, bass-heavy music. From his observation post, he watched in disbelief as the ramp of the human ship lowered, releasing soldiers in powered armor moving to the rhythm of the beat. Their movements were precise yet oddly coordinated, like they had practiced this as a performance. One soldier spun in place, fired off a stun shot, and did a small dance move as the music shifted. Another twirled a baton-like weapon and struck a dramatic pose before vanishing into cover. Porin turned to the local commander, a stony-faced reptilian named Harn. "Is this normal?" Harn grunted. "If you're asking whether they always bring music, then yes. They call it tactical rhythm optimization." Just then, one of the humans shouted over the comms, "Squad 4, drop the bass and breach on the beat." The wall of the nearby enemy bunker exploded in perfect sync with the musical drop. The enemy had no idea how to react. Their lines crumbled, not from direct fire but from total confusion. They couldn't predict what the humans would do next because the humans didn't follow logic. They followed the groove. Back at the outpost, Porin replayed the footage over and over, trying to make sense of it. The humans had synchronized their entire operation with a playlist. Each squad had its own theme, from orchestral drama to synth pop. One unit was heard arguing over whether to use electric violin or heavy guitar for their assault soundtrack. He didn't know what was worse, the fact they argued about music mid-mission, or that the argument somehow made their movements even more precise. It was around that time Porin received an invitation, one he initially thought was a prank. It read, "You are cordially invited to a tactical tea session, hosted by Bravo Team Human Special Forces. Dress code, armored casual." Against his better judgment, he went. The humans had cleared and fortified a small plaza. In the middle of it, they had set up folding tables, actual porcelain tea sets, and somehow doilies. The team leader, a large man with a quiet voice and glitter on his shoulder armor, greeted Porin with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ambassador. Would you care for the combat blend or the diplomatic one? Both are calming under fire." Porin, too stunned to reply, simply sat down. The conversation flowed easily. The humans discussed enemy tactics, defensive upgrades, and how to properly balance lemon with honey in combat conditions. They passed around scones and classified reports in the same breath. When a low alert tone sounded in the distance, they didn't panic. They calmly refilled their teacups and coordinated a drone patrol while debating the best method of deploying jam on pastries. "I don't understand," Porin finally said, setting down his cup. "You're in a war zone. How can you act like this?" The team leader grinned. "That's exactly why we do it. War is chaos. We make it ours." Meanwhile, in a different sector, Zenq, an artificial intelligence observer from the Zainari Collective, was having a data crisis. He had been assigned to study human tactics, expecting to learn patterns. Instead, he found noise, loud, colorful, rhythmic noise. Zenq watched hours of footage of human teams dancing through firefights, customizing their armor with stickers, and modifying drones to play music when they entered new rooms. One squad even added disco lights to their helmets. He tried to write a report. He failed. Every line he wrote contradicted the next. The humans broke every rule of warfare, then succeeded anyway. They didn't just win, they made it look fun. Porin, now a regular guest at the humans' strange combat rituals, tried to explain it to him. They bring control into the chaos, but not through order, through culture, through personality. They treat war like a performance, and somehow that keeps them sane. Zenq processed that thought. "So the dancing, the tea, it's not just distraction?" "It's armor," Porin replied. "Just not the kind you can wear." The final straw came during a recorded assault on an enemy stronghold. The human squad entered under fire, moving perfectly in sync with a classical piece. As explosions rang out and enemies fell, one soldier shouted, "Crescendo coming up," and timed his charge to the music's rise. The enemy scattered before they even understood what was happening. The mission report was titled, Operation, Rhythm and Breach. Zenq quietly submitted a request to never be posted near human operations again. Porin, sipping his tea while listening to a new human playlist labeled Battle Brunch, just smiled. He now understood something few others did. The humans didn't just survive war, they made it dance. Zorka had faced many battles in his time. His thick exoshell bore the scars of skirmishes on frozen moons and deep space outposts. He had once taken down a plasma tank with nothing but a wrench and raw fury, but none of that prepared him for humans. He had laughed the first time he saw their tactics. Now he didn't laugh anymore. The footage from the Nexus 14 incident had become required viewing at the Mercenary Guild, not because it offered a tactical lesson, but because it served as a warning. No one truly believed the story until they saw it for themselves. Zorka had. He had been there, and he never wanted to go back. The mission had started simply enough. A rogue colony had overthrown its own governors, and a strange human force had been sent in to restore order. The mercenary unit Zorka belonged to had been hired to stop them, but the humans didn't behave like any military unit they had faced before. They didn't even land quietly. Their dropships arrived blasting music, actual music from onboard speakers. The first squad rolled out in formation to a heavy bass beat, shouting catchphrases and throwing what looked like glow sticks into the air. Zorka had ordered his squad to hold position. They had expected an ambush. Instead, they watched in growing horror as the humans performed what could only be described as a choreographed assault. They called it Operation Beatstorm. Each movement was in time with the rhythm. Grenades were thrown to the snare drum. Breaches happened on the chorus. One soldier performed a twirling flip before kicking in a door. Back at the outpost, Halvin, a junior intelligence officer assigned to analyze the event, was speechless. He had been excited to study human combat. He thought their creativity would be interesting, but what he was seeing went far beyond creativity. It was absurd and terrifyingly effective. In one segment, the humans synchronized their attacks so precisely with the beat of their song that enemy drones malfunctioned, trying to follow their motion. The pattern didn't match any known algorithm. The drones crashed into walls or simply shut down. The humans laughed and pressed forward. The most shocking part wasn't just their tactics, it was their morale. Throughout the operation, they joked, sang, and encouraged each other as if they were on a bizarre team-building exercise rather than a battlefield. One soldier yelled, "Winner buys dinner," as he rolled under fire and tackled a target. Another responded, "Only if dessert's extra spicy," followed by a barrage of grenades. When Zorka's squad tried to hold a defense line, the humans brought in a speaker drone. Yes, an actual drone that played music, and activated something they called groove shift. They switched genres, mid-fight, from electronic beats to swing jazz and began dancing between cover like some kind of battle ballet. One of Zorka's soldiers stood up in confusion and immediately got hit with a non-lethal stun round, shaped like a rubber duck. Zorka called for a retreat. Later, Halvin submitted his final report. He had titled it, Tactical Unpredictability, When War Becomes a Performance. In it, he described the humans' use of rhythm, humor, and style as not only unconventional but dangerously effective. They do not rely solely on brute force, he wrote. They use confusion as a weapon. They attack logic itself. They bend rules not just to break them, but to make new ones, and then dance to them. The aftermath of Nexus 14 had spread fast. Other colonies began adopting pieces of what the humans called groove-based combat doctrine. Training centers held rhythm drills. Officers debated playlist strategies. Even AI cores were updated to allow for tempo-based pattern recognition. The humans had started a movement, literally. Zorka, now retired, refused to accept contracts involving humans. He sat in the back corner of the Mercenary Guild's lounge, quietly sipping a bitter drink and watching as younger fighters laughed off the old reports. He didn't warn them anymore. The footage would speak for itself. One evening, Porin visited the lounge. He placed a small music chip on the table in front of Zorka. "They've started teaching combat samba," he said calmly. "Apparently, it improves footwork and morale at the same time." Zorka didn't respond. He just reached for the chip and slid it into his personal viewer. The screen lit up with footage from a new operation, Operation Step Up and Shut Down. A squad of human operators stormed a facility while performing a coordinated salsa. Their moves were flawless. Their aim was deadly. And their music choice? Ridiculously upbeat. Back at the human command facility, the team reviewed their mission logs. The squad leader nodded thoughtfully. "All right, folks. Excellent execution. But we lost points on synchronization during the third verse. Jenkins, you were offbeat. Sorry, sir, Jenkins said. I got caught up in the footwork. No excuses. Precision matters. Now for the next mission, we're incorporating tap dancing. Everyone start practicing. One of the soldiers raised a hand. Sir, the Zenari just filed a ceasefire. They said they need time to recalibrate their sanity. Good. That means it's working. The room broke into laughter. Somewhere, a speaker started playing a jazzy remix of their victory anthem. Back in the lounge, Zorka finally stood up and walked toward the exit. Another mercenary asked where he was going. Home, he replied, before someone decides to bring back disco warfare. The lounge erupted into quiet chuckles. But then the door opened, and a courier drone flew in, dropping a message. New advisory update from the Mercenary Guild. Warning, if human special forces begin coordinating their movements with music, surrender immediately. Do not attempt to outdance them. You will lose. Zorka didn't even flinch. He'd already heard the next wave of rumors, something about tactical rap battles, and he was absolutely not sticking around for that.